So welcome back. I have mentioned this on the show before, but some of y'all may be new and maybe haven't heard this before. My initial encounter into Catholicism in late 2011, early 2012, when I joined the Catholic Church, was really a very tough experience because I realized how many of the clergy are just frankly heretics, and that was a little discouraging to encounter, in person, talking to local priests who didn't believe that Jesus was divine, others who believed in universalism. Every religion is salvific and leads to heaven, and believed, homosexuality is not a sin. Homosexual marriages should be allowed by the church. I started encountering the local clergy, many of which, again, were just, with all due respect, heretics according to just, Catholic standards. And so I would try to find, a different priest and reach out to other priests trying to find some clergy that maybe just believed the Catholic faith. And I found a few here and there, but on the whole, I just continued to find some really troubling things. And I came across one who showed up on the local news, and he was giving an interview telling the local news, and this was back in 2012, saying that the church, the Catholic Church, is eventually going to accept homosexuality and homosexual marriage. It's just a matter of time, and it's going to eventually bless homosexual marriages, and that will be a thing in Catholicism. And he was happy about that. He was very happy. This was a Franciscan friar and priest. I emailed him and asked him, "Hey, how does that work with, what the Bible teaches and the Catechism of the Catholic Church?" And he tried to say, "Well, look, the Catechism says that, the origins of homosexuality is still unknown. So we don't really know the psychological origins of it. And so there's enough room here for the church to eventually realize that this is the psychological origins are naturally ordered and they're divine. And so God is the origin of this. He has created this in his creation because he's in favor of it. And so eventually the church will realize this and will realize that it's made a mistake or whatever on its teachings on homosexuality and homosexual marriage." And, I pushed back, but that didn't really mean anything to him. He just continued to double down. And that was pretty much the end of the conversation. We were just at an impasse and nothing that we could really do at that point because I don't know. I mean, I'm showing you what the church teaches. You're saying the church is going to change it. There's not a whole lot that we can really say at this point, right? So I just had to leave it alone. And that, again, was not an unusual and uncommon experience. But this survey that just came out caught my attention because it seems to confirm that experience of mine, where, again, talking to a lot of clergy, I continue to find these kinds of troubling positions. Again, not all clergy, but a very substantial amount. And in this case, we're seeing some wild statistics here on the question of would you perform same-sex marriages, not just blessings, but marriages? Do you believe that the Bible has errors in it? Do you think that women should be pastors and priests? There's a lot going on here. I mean, some of them are just saying that Jesus isn't divine, the resurrection didn't happen. I mean, those things are just 100% incompatible with Catholicism, but it seems like there's clergy who hold these positions and really nothing is done about them. I mean, at this point, we see bishops and priests openly celebrating pride masses, and there's no discipline. Zero. Like, have you ever seen the Pope discipline any of these people? No. Has he ever written an encyclical against pride masses? No. It's done with his knowledge. And so they act with impunity at this point. And I think that further emboldens them to question other things. in the church. And so I want to take a look at that, but I also want to look at this other wild situation that one of my patrons just alerted me to. And shout out to the patron who did that. Thank you so much for sending this. It's a wild situation where looks like an archbishop in Argentina approved for a transgender couple to get married in the Catholic Church. And the couple is saying that they got approval from the archbishop via their priest. So the priest went and got it from the archbishop. But after the scandal erupted, then the archbishop started to backpedal. And so I want to take a look at that situation because it raises some serious questions. Before we dive in, however, I want to remind you hit that subscribe button. I would really appreciate your support. Okay, so let me share my screen and show you some of these survey results that are, like I said, very concerning. So this one says more mainline clergy support female and LGBTQ religious leadership and would perform a same sex wedding. The dark blue is all Christian primary leaders. Purple is evangelical Protestant. Green is black Protestant. Light blue is Catholic, and yellow is mainline Protestant. So look at this. On the question of completely or mainly agree that all religious leaders should be open to women. And this is in the context of leadership. Mainline Protestants, 95% in favor. Catholics, 43% in favor. Now, explain that to me. Because as I've pointed out numerous times, Ordinatio Sacerdotalis by Pope St. John Paul II teaches, and he says it's infallible, and he uses ex cathedra language for it too, says that women can't be ordained to the priesthood. But we repeatedly see Catholic clergy, cardinals, very prominent cardinals, bishops, priests, constantly saying the question is still open, even though the magisterium has said the question was infallibly settled. And when they're doing this, they're doing so without any kind of discipline, leading people to the conclusion that, okay, well, is it still open? Because if it isn't still open, why are cardinals doing this with impunity? Why are bishops doing this with impunity? Why are priests saying this with impunity, with no consequences? So I guess that one didn't really shock me because we've been seeing that a lot. Completely or mainly agree that all religious leadership should be open to people regardless of sexual orientation. Catholic said 40%. Well, what do you mean by open to people? I mean, welcoming people to church. Everyone should be able to come to church. That's not even an issue. All right, here it is. Definitely or probably would perform the wedding of a same-sex couple if their religious group allowed it. 40% of Catholic clergy say yes. 40% say that if the church allowed it, they would do it. Well, underlying that position is heresy, right? Because the position that somehow this can be reformed is a heretical position. So they're assuming heresy when they say this. The response should have been no, because I thought it was infallibly and divinely inspired in the Bible that this is a sin and you can't do that. And the church has always taught it's a sin, so you can't do that. So that should have been the response. Since the response is, yeah, if the church approves of it, I'll do it. That's like saying, if the church approves of fornication, I'll now preach that fornication's okay. Shouldn't your answer be that, wait, no, actually the church can't do that? To indicate that it can is already a problem. It's not surprising to me because, like I said, in my just personal interaction and experience, I don't know. Actually, that might be pretty low. If we were to see a worldwide survey and get a really, really thorough survey, I think it might actually be higher than that. But that's telling. That means pretty much 1 out of every 2 priests that you encounter is open to this. And that might explain why you probably have to sit through and endure heresy every Sunday during the homily. It might explain why your priest isn't preaching the gospel or the Bible or the truths of the faith or what the magisterium teaches. Now, there's another one from the same survey that I want to take a look at here from some other questions, kind of related. Look at this one. The Bible is the actual word of God and is to be taken literally word for word. Well, that's definitely not a Catholic position. So, less than 1% of Catholic clergy agreed with that. The Bible is inspired word of God without errors. Some parts are meant to be symbolic, but all of it applies to today. 42% said yes. Now, I don't know what parts they think are symbolic, but that's open to discussion. But here's the interesting one. The Bible is inspired word of God that still speaks to us today, but not all of it is historically accurate, and some parts reflect the culture in which it was written and do not apply to today. 58% are in favor of that. So cultural doesn't apply to today. What do you think those passages are in reference to? Probably the sexual passages, right? Probably the ones on homosexuality. It's very often to see Catholic clergy argue those don't apply to today. Don't believe me? Go and read anything from Father James Martin, and you'll see it. Well, it notes here that they take the position, 58% of them, that there's errors and mistakes in the Bible. I'm actually surprised it's only 58%. I would have thought it's way higher than that. Because again, the main Catholic commentary, like the main academic Catholic commentary, is what? No, it's not the Ignatius Catholic Study Bible. What is the main commentary that academics in the Catholic Church use? The Jerome Biblical Commentary and the New Jerome Biblical Commentary, right? Which received papal approbation. And it just outright says that Jesus and Paul contradict each other. It just outright explicitly says Jesus and Paul contradict each other, and that Jesus's understanding of the gospel was basically lost in the first few generations and was only revived later on in Islam. So a Catholic commentary says that it's Islam that carries out the teachings of Jesus, not Paul. Okay, so when you see that kind of stuff, right? And this is like front and center, the scholarship that's being used. That's why I say, I don't know. I think it might be low to say 58%. I think that might be low. I think that, in my experience, that stat should be higher. I really don't know a lot of clergy that believe that the Bible is inerrant. So, all right, let's take a look at another one, though. This one's interesting. All right. God, or how many know God really exists and have no doubts? 96%. Wait, what? Why is there 4% of the clergy that they don't know God exists? Huh? Why are you in ministry? I'm concerned that there's even 4%. Shouldn't that be 100%? All right. Definitely believe in Jesus' bodily resurrection. Only 92% of Catholic priests believe that. So 8% deny the resurrection. That's really high, actually. But I thought, according to Paul, like if you don't have the resurrection, you don't have Christianity. So what are you doing as a Catholic priest and you don't believe the resurrection? And what do you do on Easter Sunday, by the way? I'm just saying, don't you have to like read the gospel and all right, whatever. Definitely believe in heaven. 99% said yes to that one. I mean, they all want to affirm that one because they don't want to be going to hell, right? So they want to go to heaven. So of course they're going to believe in that. Although there was 1% that didn't, oddly enough. 74% believe in hell. 74%. Huh? So like 26% don't believe in hell. Golly, what do you do with the Bible that talks about it? Oh, wait, that's the same Bible that there's errors and all that. And okay, all right, maybe these are the errors that they're thinking of, right? They don't believe in hell. 99% of them believe in heaven, but only 74% believe in hell. Why? Why the difference there? Well, because of course it's convenient to believe in heaven and not in hell, right? Who wants to believe in hell, right? So, okay. All right, 73% never have doubts about faith. All right, so 27% are doubting the faith. That's a quarter, a little more than a quarter of the clergy. One in every four priests that you meet evidently doubts the faith. Golly. Well, maybe that explains why so many of them are doing such a poor job. Definitely believe Adam and Eve were historical people, only 17%. That's an interesting one as well. So, very few Catholic clergy believe Adam and Eve were historical people. And of course, people are going to ask, how does that work? If Jesus is the second Adam, how does that make sense theologically? There's been a pretty lengthy discussion on that question, really going back to even before Pius XII. But I know in Humani Generis, he talks about, and in that document, he says he doesn't see how a person could argue otherwise. But since then, some popes have opened the door to it. But opening the door, I don't know if that would really factor into that many clergy denying it, right? So where is that coming from? Are they basing this on scientific arguments? Where's that ideology coming from? That'd be a curious one to look into. But like I said, the big one for me, however, was that first one over here. 40% definitely or probably would perform the wedding of a same-sex couple if their religious group allowed it. That's wild. 1 out of 2, basically. That's crazy. Now, maybe that explains why we're seeing this story. This is a story about a transgender group that got married in a Catholic church, married by the priest inside the church, and they're saying with the approval of the archbishop. And here's why. Here's why they're saying it was approved. So, from what I gather, both of them are biological males, even though one of them is claiming to be a biological female. They're both biological males, but one is identifying as a female and identifying as a biological female, but identifying as a trans couple, which means one of them is not, or both of them are not biological females, right? Both are biological males. So playing with words, twisting the meaning of words here, but because one identifies as a female and the other one is a male, they were approved to get married in the church because the teaching of the church is that a male and a female can get married. And so they're saying, well, hey, you say you're a female and you're a male, so what's the problem? Approved. And then they get married. After the couple comes out about this in public and it caused a huge scandal, now the archbishop is backtracking, saying, well, you didn't get the technical paperwork here. It wasn't technically approved. And okay, let's take a look at it. All right, so a trans couple sealed their love by getting married in a church in Corrientes. Solange Ayala and Isaiah's are a trans couple who married in January in a Catholic church ceremony in the city of Corrientes. We were able to get married because we are of different biological sexes. I don't think it works like that. Which one is it? You're of different biological sexes or you're a trans couple? Like, which? Pick a lane. Pick a lane. Come on now. Why are you saying biological? Come on now. You know that you weren't born a female. Just stop it. Stop. Both biological males. One identifies as a female. That doesn't make different biological sexes. But whatever. Okay. The priest spoke with the archbishop, who told us there was nothing he could object to, the newlywed bride told Radio Sudamericana. So, because the idea is that, again, man and women, or man and woman, can get married according to church law. You say you're a woman and you're a man, even though you just look at the guy who's identifying as female, very clearly a guy. There was no confusion. Also, they went to the priest and explained their situation and explained they're a trans couple. The priest goes to the archbishop and explains the situation and says they're a trans couple, and it was approved because one identifies as a female and the other is a male. So there was no confusion. Don't say, well, Michael, maybe the archbishop or the priest, they didn't know that this was a biological male. No, they knew. They went in advance. They told them. They knew. Here's a video of it, actually. It's on Instagram. Here you can see it's being performed in I guess this is a Catholic church, but it looks more Protestant, but there is the papal flag here, so I'm going to have to say that's a Catholic church. Speaking to Radio Sudamericana, Solange Ayala recounted how she experienced the most important day of her life when she and her partner Isaiah were married in a church of the Archdiocese of Corrientes on January 28th. We are a trans couple who were able to receive the blessing of the church. It is exciting for us because we can bring those who are part of the community and those who believe in and practice the Catholic religion closer to the church again, to show them that not all doors are closed and that we can be part of a religious community. She also added, he proposed to me at the beginning of December, and we weren't going to do it in a church because it seemed impossible. There's so much talk about churches not accepting the LGBTQ community, so we started looking for other options. Several people told us this church was quite open to welcoming the community. Okay, so it wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a case that it's like they didn't know that they were transgender. They did. And this community, this parish, is in the business of being open to that. We went through the process like any other. We started a marriage file. We approached the friar. Oh, look at that. He's another one of these Franciscan friar priests who's in favor of this. There you go. We approached the friar to talk, and he received us very well. We had a chat. He explained the steps to follow, and he himself went to speak with the archbishop and told us there was nothing he could object to against us being able to get married because if we were to be transparent about our biological identity, we were a man and a woman, so we could be blessed under the sacrament of marriage, the LGBT activists were counting. So this is not one of those fiducia supplicans, Pope Francis, Pope Leo blessings. This is not one of those. This is an actual claim that they're receiving the sacrament of marriage. Now, let me ask you a question. If they didn't know that they were transgender, why would the priest have to ask the bishop? Does a priest have to ask a bishop to witness your marriage? No, not if it is a heterosexual couple. He does not have to contact the bishop. He already has faculties for it. The fact that he has to go to the archbishop is why? Because they're both biological males. So he had to go and ask permission from the archbishop. You'll see why I'm belaboring this point. Explains the situation to him. Archbishop approves. Priest does it. When we asked what it meant for them to receive the sacrament, she said, for me, it was very exciting. Isaiah also received it with me with much more emotion. All this you can see in the Instagram video, in the article at the top, but it's all in Spanish, so I'm just reading a transcript for you. For me, it was very exciting. Isaiah also received it with much more emotion. I was a little distant from Catholicism because of all that stuff that kind of ingrained and that we often generalize within activism. But it was exciting to know that it's another way to be active and occupy spaces. So it was a matter of reaffirming my commitment to it and being able to show that we could be part of the community like everyone else. Here is the male identifying as female. Now, if you're a priest and this person comes to you and says, "Can I get married?" Are you going to say, you know, you're a biological female? You're going to know there's something up here, right? But again, they already discussed it. They told him their situation, went and spoke to the archbishop. When I arrived at the church, everything seemed unreal because it wasn't something I expected. Even my trans friends were inside the church and they were saying it was like fulfilling a dream we all have, because who hasn't dreamed of getting married in a church at some point? Even though we're constantly rebuilding ourselves and shedding certain expectations, some of those expectations still remain and are part of our dreams. We were embraced by our families and also by our extended family. I also talk about the family I've formed throughout my activism and my transition, which is my comrades in the LGBT collective, and they were right there too with me. It was wonderful. Regarding whether there are cases in the country, Solange, other cases in the country, Solange indicated the only precedent I knew of was in Patagonia. I don't remember exactly which province, where a trans woman married a man and the marriage was annulled because they were people of the same sex. Another point, the newly highlighted, was the respect shown for the gender identity law. They knew how to handle it because even though our baptismal certificates have our previous names, both mine and Isaiah's, when it came to giving us the new marriage certificate, signing the document, and so on, it was with our names that we have today on the document. So the parish knew, the priest knew, he changed their name to their new names. They saw what they had on their baptismal certificate. They know that they're both biological males, and then they changed one to the other name because the other is identifying as a female. So please, please don't come back to me and gaslight me. Please don't do it and come back and say, but Michael, maybe they didn't know. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. I will throw this microphone at you. Do not do it. They knew. They knew. She's telling you they knew. It's all over their certificates. They knew. They spoke to the Archbishop. They knew. It's a matter of them being informed. They know there's an identity law, because I was saying they could have easily told me, we'll marry you, but we'll marry you with the name that's on your baptismal certificate. And the reality was that no, the priest understood everything from the beginning and gave the blessing with the names we have today. The priest knew. To conclude, she reflected, I take it as very natural because I'm not going to lie. It's not like I was ultra Catholic and super devout. I do know of other trans people who are very fervent Catholics, and in that sense, they can't be given the opportunity. But I do feel it's a matter of visibility. I'm not grateful to the church, but I am quite surprised that they took it all so naturally, because in fact, we were so protected in the church that they kind of avoided us crossing paths with other people who might have made us feel bad and so on. So not only did they know, the priests in the church tried to keep it quiet from other people in the church who would have opposed it. Knowing what they're doing is wrong, they tried to hide it. That's going to be important to what we see next. That's what fills me with pride, being able to talk about it and share that it happened. It's not about saying I beat the system. Look, I got married in a church, but rather about making visible the change that this particular religious community wants to make and wants to reach out to the LGBTQ community. Now, another source is saying, after all of this, after initially the archbishop approving of it, knowing the details and them trying to all hide it from people who would be critical, so they would try to keep it on the hush and on the low so that people don't find out. Once it became public and there's a big controversy about it, all of the sudden, the archdiocese clarified that the archbishop has moved to act ex officio under canon law and issue warnings and potential punishment for those responsible. The archdiocese never received the ecclesiastical documentation corresponding to the formalities required for handling these cases, according to the statement. The doctrine of the church and to the legal order that ensures the correct and fruitful celebration of the sacraments wasn't received. Now, again, to reiterate, priest was informed. Priest goes to the archbishop to explain the situation. Archbishop approves it because he says, well, one of them identifies as a female and one of them is a male. And according to church law, men and women can get married. So, hey, go ahead and go through with it, but hide it. Don't let people who would be opposed to it know about it. And all of a sudden, when it was made public, because she goes on the radio and starts telling everyone about it, all of a sudden, actually, you didn't get these documents. And so I might now need to issue a canonical warning. Excuse me? What? Sounds to me like the Archbishop is backpedaling. Sounds to me like the Archbishop thought it would be fine because no one would find out. It wouldn't be a public scandal. All of a sudden, when it turns into a public scandal, oh, you didn't get the paperwork. She says she has the paperwork. You didn't get the paperwork. You didn't tell us about. She says that she did. The priest, as you saw in the photos, went through with the ceremony. Why would he do that unless he did sit down with the Archbishop? If this is all made up and all just a lie, wouldn't the Archbishop discipline the priest? Yeah. Guarantee that's not going to happen because he knows perfectly well he sat down with that priest and approved it. But he didn't think that this would come into what it is today. I'm not buying it at all. He says initially, it's okay because male and female, what's the problem? But when people point out conveniently, yeah, no, this is wrong. You're just lying when you say you're a female. This is against the church. Now I'm going to start issuing canonical censures. Now I'm going to start taking my job seriously. Only when there's a public scandal. And isn't that what every single time happens? These things continue to go on behind the scenes. The only time there's ever a problem is whenever there's a public outcry. Go and watch the video I did about my own diocese. Trying to sneak in a priest who is torturing and killing animals. Tried to sneak him into this diocese. Tried to pass it off like there was no problem. And it was only after an outcry of all the people in the Diocese of Shreveport saying, this is disgusting, what are you doing? Only then the bishop wants to say, okay, he's not going to be assigned here. Go and watch that video. It's only after public outcries that they will act. Not before, only after. Which tells me something. If you want to see the bishops do their job, you cannot depend on them to do their job on their own. The only way you can ensure they will do their job is if you raise a public stink about it. That's the only way. Or you just stop giving your money to them, right? Because then they would actually have to go and get a job. Maybe work at McDonald's for a living. They would actually have to go and do something. So this shows me, once again, the only way you can get them to act is addressing the issue publicly. You cannot rely on it privately. I've done it numerous times. I've seen it numerous times. You will not get a resolution by going to them privately. I've watched Rome refer cases back to the local bishop who's hiding abuse cases. I've watched that behind the scenes. Rome turns it back to a bishop when people are complaining about the bishop covering things up, and then Rome turns it right back and says, see your local bishop about this matter. Oh, so you're just going to ignore that whole part where we're telling you that the bishop is covering it up? Yeah. And by the way, this is not just like right now. I've seen this under Benedict, under Francis, under Pope Leo. This isn't something that's just unique to one pope. The only time, however, that the things are addressed is whenever it's public. Do not expect anything to come from private correspondence or private confrontation. I think this illustrates that. Because guess what? If somebody had gone and complained to the Archbishop of Corrientes privately, you think he would have done something? No. He's only doing something because it's a public scandal to save face. He didn't do the right thing initially. Let that sink in. So again, it tells you, how do you address it? You address it publicly. That's how you address it. That's the only way you will find accountability. And that's sad. Looking through the chat here, let's see what y'all have going on. See some questions about Vatican II or comments about Vatican II. Okay, here's one. It seems they were opposite biological sex, so technically they can marry. No. No. Like I said, I know I reiterated this at least 12 times in this video. Like I said, both biological males, one of them claims now to be a biological female because they're under the delusion that if you identify as a female, you're a female. And so now one of them is saying that they're a biological female, but they're also saying that they're a trans couple. Now, please explain to me, if one of them is a biological female and one of them is a biological male, how are they a trans couple? Right. So, okay. Hello, Miss Flips. Good to see you. What else we have here? Looking through the chat. Pius V says, the faith has always been dynamic. It was Leo the 13th who called for the end of slavery. You know, there were some popes prior to Leo the 13th who were opposed to it, but there were some others who were in favor of it as well. That's definitely one of those areas where you get conflicting information from the magisterium. One commenter says marriage is between two humans with different sex organs. Well, different biological sex organs, right? So that wasn't the case here. That's the problem. Okay. All right. So one commenter says one is trans man and the other trans woman. I think Michael got this wrong. Let's just go with that for a moment. If that's the case, why is the Archbishop all of a sudden walking it back saying that this can't be done? Just think through that for a second. Why is that? I think we know why. Miss Flip says, wow, I have to watch this back. Sounds interesting. It's a wild one. One commenter says, God is not in that church. He would never allow such thing to take place in his house. That's an interesting perspective. You know, God allowed some pretty wild stuff in his house in the Old Testament, right? Allowed idols and allowed for priests to have sacrificial offerings to other gods there, and sexual acts within the temple, sexual prostitutes. In the New Testament, in the temple, God allowed, you know, when Jesus cleansed the temple, some pretty wild stuff there. I don't know, but maybe you would say that that wasn't God's house. Let me see. I think there might be. Oh, and welcome. We got Wonder Explorer just became a new member. Welcome to the show and channel. Let's see here. Core said, "Thank you, Michael, for all that you do. Keep your work up. Uh, keep your joy." Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for the super sticker. What does slavery have to do with the topic? I'm confused. Nothing. It has nothing to do with it. Shut up. You know how people are in the chat. I mean, they're discussing Vatican II right now. Okay. What did I get wrong? One was born a man, the other was born a woman. That's a fact. I think that's the fact that we're not agreeing with. So I think that's the breakdown here in communication. Okay. What else we have? Looking through the chat a little bit more. People discussing purgatory. How did we get to purgatory? Michael, did you say she said? Well, if you want me to qualify every single statement and he that claims to be a she. What else do we have here? Are all truths from God? Paul's asking. I don't know if he's asking somebody else in the comments or me. Yeah, I mean, all truth, I would say, comes from God. Yeah. Seems like also Vatican II talks about that in multiple documents. Nostra Aetate, for example. Lent is soon, a reminder of the true rainbow to repent and believe. Well, there's a message you won't hear these days, right? Repentance. That's that missing word that you'll never hear. Repentance. Why is that always conspicuously missing? So, what else we have here? Third world country nonsense. I don't think this is an issue of just Latin America, right? Because this is a problem you'll find in the United States. Isn't that an issue here as well? So I don't think you can just dismiss this as Latin America. Okay. One commenter says Vatican II contradicts unum sanctum. Well, there's one I've given some lectures on whether or not that's the case. Let me actually show you that. For those of y'all who are interested, since you're having that conversation, let me pull it up to rtcourses.com. Let's see here. Okay. Here we go. No salvation outside the church, a careful look at the Catholic position. Take a look at that one. Again, it's at rtcourses.com. I also talk a little bit more about that in the lecture on Can Catholic Doctrine Change? And also magisterial difficulties, exploring the tensions and the documents of the church. So maybe go and check those out. And of course, we always, I always recommend that you check out the lectures on the magisterium itself and the magisterial studies program, 30 lectures that I think you will find absolutely fascinating and helpful. So if you want to understand what the magisterium is, how to read magisterial documents, the history of the magisterium, is the best resource that you can find out there. 30 lectures that I deliver at the university level, made available to you right here, rtcourses.com. So make sure to check it out. All right, I'm probably going to do another show here in just a little bit about Epstein, so y'all stay tuned for that, and also a patron-only show, Lord willing, so stay tuned for more. We'll see you soon. God bless. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe, and if you want to support my work, check me at patreon.com/Reason of Theology. Also, check out my second channel, Knowledge and Wisdom, right here on YouTube.